What's up? Welcome to the Gooner channel, and well, it's a beautiful Sunday. Earlier on today, Tottenham succumbed to their 17th defeat of the Premier League season. They've only played 32. There are 6 games left to go, but this is already on track to be their worst league season in around 40 years. So look, I'm not going to pretend that I don't enjoy watching Tottenham suffer. But this is getting a bit ridiculous now, isn't it? Watching them capitulate in a way they did against Wolverhampton Wanderers with pretty much a full strength side. You have to wonder how it's possible that Big Ange is still in a job. I actually did a video in May of last year saying I thought Ange Postecoglou had been found out, that he really wasn't up to the level required at Spurs, and they were inevitably going to do what they always do, get rid of him before the end of this season. Well, here we are with only 6 games left to go, and Ange is still firmly in place as their manager. Now, obviously, one of the reasons for that is the quarter-final second leg against Eintracht Frankfurt, which is on Thursday. It's a precarious tie, to say the least, with 1-1 draw after the home leg, which wasn't terrible, but certainly wasn't as inspiring as our 3-0 win over Real Madrid. And before you say it, I know that Liverpool won today as well, and Arsenal at this point can only really hope to finish second again. So I'm not pretending it's been a hugely exciting season for us, and in many ways there are parallels for Mikel Arteta's situation with the game against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. If that goes against him, we could be looking at more conversation around how much longer Arteta should have a job. But we're not there yet, and the 3-0 home win over Real Madrid has probably staved that off a little bit. But for Ange Postecoglou, I felt like the massive outpouring of love for him, because he managed to get Spurs to the top of the table after 9 games last season, was part of a symptom of a bigger problem in football. People are very much more focused on what's right in front of them without really wanting to analyse why. For me, it seemed obvious that the reason that Tottenham were top of the table back then was because they played very poor sides. I felt as though as soon as they started playing better sides, they'd get found out. I likened it to the drunk guy on a unicycle, because you're just waiting to see when he falls off, and when he does, it'll be a comedic crash. That's happened now, I think we can all say. When injuries occurred last season after the game against Chelsea, where they were tactically ridiculous, but it's just who we are, mate. It's who we are. We're going to play ridiculously high lines against teams, even if we're down to 9 men. And you know what? If we lose and it's entertaining, are you not entertained? Well, I don't know if anyone is anymore. He didn't seem to me as charismatic as the Tottenham fans were making him out. And I think we can all agree now that he's definitely not a charismatic person. Curmudgeonly, bitter, belligerent, angry. Just this week talking about leaking the Tottenham training ground, or I don't know who's leaking what and what difference it would make if they were. But it seems to me like Ange Postecoglou has not only been found out and found wanting, but why is he still Tottenham manager? Those fans who supported him to the very end have now turned on him as well. There's hardly anyone now who still thinks that Ange Postecoglou is doing a good job. And when you think of the kind of managers they were linked with before they opted for Ange Postecoglou, Julian Nagelsmann, who's now doing a fantastic job in charge of Germany, and Luis Enrique, who might be about to take Paris Saint-Germain to their first Champions League victory, as long as they can get past Arsenal or Real Madrid. Whoever gets through the semi-final, I'm not counting any chickens. But the fact that they opted for Ange Postecoglou is quite weird in itself anyway, because of course he was hugely successful as Celtic manager, but then isn't everybody? Celtic have had it their own way in Scotland for a while now, and it's a little bit like winning Ligue 1 with Paris Saint-Germain. It's not really enough. So the fact that they opted for Ange Postecoglou instead of a more high-profile figure, and amongst those I would include Pochettino, who has said even recently that he hopes one day to return to Tottenham. He is, after all, the one manager, with the exception, possibly you could argue, Harry Redknapp, who in the last 20 or so years has given Tottenham fans hope. Might not have delivered the silverware, but definitely seemed on the right track. And it was an unusual decision, to say the least, not to support him in the transfer market and to sack him so soon after making a Champions League final on a shoestring. It does make you wonder if Daniel Levy isn't perhaps a closet Arsenal fan. But leaving the conspiracy theories to one side, the reality is that Ange Postecoglou came without really the pedigree that you would expect of a side that thinks of themselves as top six. Particularly when you think of two of their previous three managers being Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, who, as we all know, are serial winners who have achieved everything you can in football across a number of different leagues. The point was, though, that Tottenham fans had put up with Jose Mourinho's appointment and his park the bus tactics because they were so desperate to win something more than an Audi Cup. When that didn't work, and perhaps they didn't quite give it long enough, they did, after all, sack him less than a week before their League Cup final, and I guess we'll never know what would have happened there. But it is also telling, isn't it, that Jose Mourinho can be fired in the week running up to a League Cup final, but it seems unlikely that Ange Postecoglou is going to be fired 4 days before the Europa League game against Eintracht Frankfurt, which is, let's be honest, it's only a quarter-final. They'd still have to get past 2 legs of a semi-final and win a final as well. So sandwiched in between Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte is Nuno Espirito Santo, who's having a fantastic season at the moment, third with Nottingham Forest, who, let's be honest, have not had the same resources as Ange Postecoglou. It seems, when you put all this together, Ange Postecoglou never really had the pedigree. Yes, he had a good first 9 games against teams that you should be beating, and since then it's gone horribly wrong for him. He has signed some great players as well, and that was part of why I think so many Spurs fans felt really confident in singing "I'm loving Big Ange" instead. This season it's easy to look at it and say there has been a lot of misfortune. We know that. Arsenal fans don't get to talk about injuries as the reason we didn't win the league this season. We are, of course, miles behind the Liverpool side, who haven't really struggled with the same kind of injuries as we have. But this team, this Tottenham team that lost to Wolverhampton Wanderers 4-2, basically capitulated. Had Christian Romero at centre-back, had most of their players fit, playing, or at least on the bench. They're not going through an injury crisis right now. And Wolverhampton Wanderers had 4 big chances and scored from all of them. The second goal that Wolves scored could serve as a metaphor for Tottenham's time under Ange Postecoglou, because when your keeper, who's been a really decent keeper for them, palms the ball into one of your better defenders and sees it go in for the second goal, having conceded the first goal in just a couple of minutes, something's not right. I've heard Ange Postecoglou say over and over again, yeah, the players couldn't give me much more, they're doing brilliant. I don't believe him. I don't think these Spurs players are running through walls for Ange. Maybe there was a point where they were, but they're definitely not right now. It looks to me, for all the world, like, and look, footballers, however you might like to parody them, are not stupid. If you're in that Tottenham dressing room right now, you are thinking to yourself, I wonder who's coming in. There isn't the jeopardy of relegation, and they didn't play against Eintracht Frankfurt in the home leg like a team who's desperate to win the Europa League. And I'm not discounting the chance that they might still do that. I'm really not. But if Ange has lost the players, he's definitely lost the fans. In the game against Chelsea, cupping his ear to the Tottenham fans when he thought they'd equalised, that's pretty bad. To antagonise your own fan base, and he's done it before. It started really to go wrong for him in that game where they played Manchester City, and there was this element of the Spurs fan base that really did want to see Man City win that game to deny us any chance of winning the title. And it obviously rubbed Big Ange up the wrong way. And you can understand why. I mean, most fans outside of Tottenham can understand how that's just not footballing behaviour. That's not the behaviour of real fans. But cupping your ear, arguing with the Spurs fans, he hasn't really got much support in the Spurs fan base right now. There is something else, though, within all of this nightmare season they're having. The fact that they may not even make 40 points, which was always considered the baseline that you have to achieve in order to stave off relegation. In fact, this season, let's be honest, it's only the fact that the 3 promoted clubs have done so badly that means that Tottenham aren't at least in some jeopardy of going down. They're certainly not too big to go down. But the interesting thing is they have scored the 3rd most goals in the Premier League. So, having lost the players, or seemingly lost the players, having lost the fan base, or at least having had them turn on him now, and pretty angrily in most cases, the only reason I can think of why Ange would still be in a job has to be the backing and support of Daniel Levy. But when you consider that Daniel Levy is now facing more and more chance that the fans want him out, this is not why you hire a manager. You don't hire a manager to have your own fans singing for you to leave. And I'm not sure I get it either, because since he took over, or since ENIC took over at Spurs, they have hugely invested in the infrastructure and built them a stadium, whatever it's called, doesn't have a name. But they have built a stadium which rivals any stadium in the world. And Tottenham Hotspur, believe it or not, in the last 5 years, are the 3rd highest net spending football club. So it's not as if Ange Postecoglou hasn't been backed at all. He's had around £250 million to spend. And I don't think he's necessarily done a terrible job with that money. But Solanke, it always feels like Tottenham are in the market for the next best thing. And this summer just gone in the transfer window, I don't know if you would say that it looked like Ange had been backed, but they did go and invest heavily in quote-unquote Project Youth. So why is Daniel Levy keeping hold of Ange Postecoglou? Assuming he doesn't sack him before Thursday's second leg of the quarterfinals in the Europa League, which wouldn't necessarily surprise me. But if he does keep him, does he keep him even if they get knocked out in the semi-final or if they lose a final? Is one of the reasons that Ange Postecoglou is still in charge at Tottenham the fact that there are so few high-profile managers out there? And should that be an apocryphal tale to all the Arsenal fans who tell you they need to get rid of Arteta, who have gone a bit quiet at the moment? But maybe there just aren't the managers out there. After all, Vincent Kompany is currently in charge of Bayern Munich, and that still fries my brain. That said, though, having seen Ange Postecoglou's post-match press conferences, his belligerent approach, his slightly sarcastic and belligerent approach, the fact he looks like a used car salesman with the charisma of a brick, the fans aren't loving him. The players aren't clearly pushing. The players clearly couldn't give a toss if he stays or goes. And Daniel Levy, despite having spent the 3rd most money of any chairman in football in the Premier League, I don't think I can remember a bigger case of dead man walking, but I just don't understand why. I'd love to hear what you think. Why do you think Ange Postecoglou is still in charge of Tottenham, assuming that by the time I've edited this on Sunday night, he is still in charge at Tottenham? And do you think that Spurs can win the Europa League? There aren't that many big clubs in it. Lazio went down 2-0 to Bodo Glimt. Man United today battered by Newcastle. They don't look great. Could Ange Postecoglou defy us all, win European silverware for Tottenham? And how would we deal with that as Arsenal fans if we don't go on and win the Champions League? Or how poetic would be, or more to the point, how poetic would it be if the season they win the Europa League is the season we win the Champions League? Now I am off in dreamland. I might see what odds you get on that and put a bet on it. But I think the reality is Ange Postecoglou is not now, nor has he ever been good enough to manage Tottenham in the Premier League. He's tactically naive. The team don't seem motivated well enough. There may be huge problems for any Tottenham manager to deal with. And so maybe it's not a criticism of Ange Postecoglou that he hasn't been able to reverse Tottenham's fortunes. But I think it's going to take a manager with more but it's clearly going to take a bigger manager than Ange Postecoglou, not in waistline obviously, but a bigger manager in profile to fix Tottenham. Let me know what you think. Anyway, until I see you again, be lucky. Lots of love.
Subscribe.
And now that we're filming,
Oh,
go for it.
people, now subscribe.